This is like the holy of the holies, right? This is like this is like the Library of Alexandria over here.
Oh, not
Idaho Falls style, man. This is
No,
wow.
I've seen people with 50,000 books in their homes.
Well, the thing is this that
I don't have enough space. I have to double
yeah.
row shelf everything. So technically, there's twice as many books here.
Well, there's one thing. Well, there's one thing about having a lot of books in your house, but I guarantee you, if I pick up any one of these books, you can tell me about it. So that means that you've read the majority.
I've read every last page.
I know.
Of each book.
I'm sure. Yeah. Nice joke. Yeah, exactly.
Every last page.
I mean, I'm sure, any intellectual scholar, whatever. There's books, and you probably have a power that you buy them and you put it there. You like, when I get to it, I'll get to it. But for the most part,
a lot of it's research. A lot of this section here is the
kind of break it down to me. How do you got this?
All of these. I've got about 75, 80, 90 books on the historical Jesus from various Jewish, Christian, Mormon, and atheist views.
Okay.
And so, and I like they analyze the New Testament and the Old Testament, and there's some specialty items like this Hankin on the Acts of the Apostles, and then I've got overall general views of the historical Jesus and the cross that spoke and the last week of Jesus, stuff like that, But the historical Jesus stuff is really fascinating.
Right.
It really is. It's kind of like the historical Muhammad,
Right.
You don't have to be a Muslim.
No,
It's fascinating to study it. And then I've got more of this is a lot of my mythological, historical, Greek, myth, Gnostic, early Christian history, history of Satan and the devil, and then the non-canonical writings, and then different commentaries of the scripture, stuff about Jesus, Philo, Josephus, and all that. And then the Greek stuff, Euripides, St. Augustine, Aeschylus, Aristophanes, Sophocles, Graves on the history, and all the different tragedies and comedies, and Homer and Ovid and all those guys.
Let me ask you about tragedies. Why was tragedies so important? Like for the Greeks and Romans?
Yeah, the Greeks made a big deal about tragedy.
Why is that?
Because their life, what they were trying to do was emulate life. It's like the ancient Gilgamesh epic from the Mesopotamians. We all want eternal life right now, but death has its claim. So you can't learn it all, you can't be it all, you can't know it all, you can't have it all, you can't be it all. The tragedy is we're finite with infinite desires.
Wow.
And that's what they were writing today. I mean, that's a brief nutshell, but something like that.
That's some deep shit. Coming from the backyard professor. That's some deep shit.
That's some bullshit.
That's some deep shit, homie. Wow. Well, that's powerful.
So anyway, and then the Gnostics were the same way. You know what the word Gnostic means?
Was knowledge or what?
Yeah, knowledge. So they claimed to have the actual special knowledge about eternal life.
Who started Gnosticism?
Who knows? There isn't such a thing as a Gnosticism. There's various. It's just like Christianity. You can't say Christianity. No, it's Christianities. There's all kinds of different kinds of Christianities.
Right.
It's just like early Judaism. Neusner and those guys, the Jewish scholars, they said when you look back on the ancient stuff, you don't get just a single Judaism.
Right.
You have the Essenes at the Dead Sea Scrolls. You've got there's all kinds of different Jews.
Well, let me ask you something. In your opinion, because I know there's there's allegations and there's some people that believe was Jesus in the scene, or was John the Baptist in the scene, or that you think that's just all more conspiracy?
No, that's not a conspiracy necessarily. It's one of the interpretations, interesting interpretations. If he didn't claim to have the gnosis, his followers certainly claimed it for him.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, there is a
Well, because
an esoteric secret
you got
knowledge
the
there.
Gnostic Paul.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
that's Pagels. Pagel, I've got all of Pagel's stuff. She's good reading.
Okay,
She's
oh,
fun.
yeah. What is
Yeah,
she?
her husband, when he was alive, was a physicist, a
Mm.
cosmologist. He had some great stuff on
Right, right,
cosmology
right.
and astronomy.
Is she a Christian writer?
She's, well, I mean, she writes about Christianity. Gnosticism technically is a form of Christianity. It just
Okay.
wasn't orthodox,
Mm.
but it was one of the rivals
Right,
to the
right.
early Christians.
What made it rival Christianity? As far as,
Because those who claimed a historical Jesus as an actual figure here on earth,
Mhm.
there were some Gnostics who said no, he was a spiritual Jesus,
Mm.
and the real Savior is knowledge that you get from God to you instead of through a church.
Oh wow!
And
I can see
when
how that can shake things up.
yeah, when the
definitely.
church became officially sponsored by the state, they had the power to stamp out all their enemies, and that's why we have just one historical view of Christianity,
Wow.
and it's from the Orthodox winner's point of view.
Mm.
Now that archaeology has found the Gnostic stuff and all that,
Right.
we realize there were a lot of different people back then, just like there are today. It's no
Right. Well,
So-
did the Gnosticism, did it predate Christianity? Was there always a threat of form of Gnosticism around?
Depends on who you read, but as a general, yeah.
Mm.
It was actually in the same. It was all after Alexander the Great conquered the ancient world.
Okay.
Then he died, and then everybody split up his kingdom.
Right.
And the three different, the Ptolemies, and those guys, they all clashed. Rome ended up being the winner, and they all basically claimed to have their own truth.
Right. Right.
And so they were always constantly arguing. But you got to realize, Gnosticism exists. I mean, Manichaeanism itself.
What is that? What is that?
There are still Manichaeans alive today.
What is
Iraq.
Manichaeanism?
Mani was a Manichaean. It's actually called
Okay.
after Mani, and Augustine, the early
Okay.
Christian church father, the one who
Right.
wrote City of God.
Right.
And
Right.
his
Right.
Confessions. I've got his Confessions and City of God around here somewhere. But he was a Manichaean for a while.
Mm.
But they were another one of those Christian group. I don't know if you can call any of them Christian, because who were the early Christians in Jesus' day? They were all Jews.
You're right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this book. It's like this book by Barry Wilson. One of the most stunning cockeyed books I've ever read in my life.
Okay.
And people who believe in Christianity really kick him in the teeth. They hate him, but he got his PhD on this, how Jesus became Christian.
Wow.
Because everybody knows Jesus was a Christian, right?
Right.
Just like everybody knows he was white, right?
Exactly right.
And we're all wrong.
Right. Exactly.
Because Jesus was a Jew.
Right.
And he was brown skinned.
Right.
He gives the historical tracings of the followers of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
who basically reinterpreted the portrait to their liking. And like I say, once they became the state power,
Right.
oh heck, they could, if they didn't copy off other people's works, those just rotted through time.
Mm.
And they kept copying their own views, so
Right.
that survived.
Right.
And that's what we read. But what we read is just 1,000th, maybe if we're lucky, of what was actually written back then.
Wow.
So, I mean, there were hundreds of different sects and views that we haven't got a clue what they thought.
Wow.
We've got just a few here and there, and that's why everybody made a big whoop about the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi
Right.
codices.
Mm-hmm.
They're hoping to find more ancient stuff, but crap, we're still trying to interpret the stuff we have.
Right.
The ancient Mesopotamian tablets from Ras Shamra, and now that's back in the Old Testament days, but I mean, we've only translated maybe, 20% of them still.
Right.
But the reason nobody wants to put the money and time and effort into it is because it doesn't have anything to do with Jesus or Paul or whatever. And so the Western world is just enamored with this hero figure, Jesus and Paul, the founder of Christianity, you know.
Right.
And so that's what gets written about Muslim. And it's fun stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
It really is. It's very interesting. But yeah, if you can get that book, that'll open your eyes. That's a fun one.
So you have all these different versions of. I mean, definitely you read different sides to try to come.
Oh,
to
sure,
a
yeah.
center
I
point.
always have to read different sides.
Yeah.
In fact, I read in the same side, the same subject, like Gnosticism. I read different sides within each subject, not just between subjects, but between authors within subjects, because everyone has a different interpretation.
You said something
That's what's fun.
the last time we spoke was that's really stayed with me, and I forgot the guy you told me you heard from, but you said that when you approach a subject, you always want to first go to the stuff that disproves it. In other words, the way I understood what you were trying to tell me. Let's say I have a certain belief that I believe in.
Right.
To really grasp that, you were saying that I should not be afraid to study.
The opposite point of view.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Instead of just immersing myself in
just one
exactly.
view.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that what will happen then is you end up with the desire to demonstrate your view that you believe as being true. So what you'll do, without even knowing it, you don't even recognize this in yourself. It's called confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. Whatever confirms what I believe, I will read and research and write a book about and all that. But anything that disproves what I believe or shows that what I believe may not be quite the right interpretation or whatever, you just ignore that. Or else you try to refute it with a bias, meaning that, that guy doesn't think like me, therefore he can't be right, so I have to show he's wrong. You automatically start assuming he's wrong. But you don't know that until you research his stuff. But if you're confirming your own bias, mostly what people will do is they'll simply give whoever or whatever point of view a label. Well, he's just a Democrat.
Right.
Or, he's a libertarian. Or, they're just Republicans. Those are Christians. They can't know anything, they're Jews.
Right.
You'll label someone, and then you don't have to deal with their argument. That's called an ad hominem.
An ad hominem.
Insulting the person, not discussing the argument.
Wow, so you're discrediting the information based on the person instead of the information.
Yeah, you're bald. You can't possibly know anything about Jesus. That's ad hominem. Ad hominem. Mean against the man, not the argument.
Some more deep shit.
Some more
ad hominem.
Ad hominem.
And confirmation bias. Again,
confirmation bias.
Learning here with the backyard professor, man. This is wild, man. This is wild. I could be here all damn day listening to this guy. So, tell me what is it? So, what is this section here?
This is all of my Mormonism section. This was the when I was doing apologetics. I was doing. You remember me telling you about confirmation bias and all that?
Yeah.
What a lot of this represents is the pro history, meaning the stuff that defended how Joseph Smith interpreted both history and scripture,
right,
and God and stuff like that. And then as through the years, as I got, I was trying to expand my ability to be an apologist. I began reading other historians who didn't necessarily believe the miraculous claims, but they were trying to situate Joseph Smith in his own day. And so it's kind of an eclectic mix. I have a whole bunch of stuff by pro-Mormons. I've got the way, and remember me telling you about labels.
Yeah.
Well, you've got the well, for lack of a better description, faithful Mormons.
Okay.
The faithful disciple scholars is how they love to call themselves. They're the ones that simply accept the church leader's point of view, the official church history point of view,
Okay.
and they'll deal with information within that parameter.
Right.
If anything falls outside of the official view, they're not allowed to, or else they're not interested in actually getting the fullest possible information. They just want the stuff that shows you, yeah, Joseph Smith was a prophet and all that.
Right.
The more, quote, to use a label, liberal Mormons say, and they're called liberal Mormons by the conservative Mormons. See, no matter what you do, you're in labels, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like you can't
It's the
escape
craziest
from it.
thing.
Yeah.
So, but the more liberal Mormons say, well, yeah, all right, that's what Joseph Smith said. Yes, that's what this particular church leader says today. Yes, that's what BYU will teach in their Religion 101 class. However, we notice that as they're researching and studying, they're not dealing with this author, this interpretation of Joseph Smith, and so on and so forth. So you kind of have a clash.
Right. Okay.
Of ways of interpreting the information, just exactly like in every other religion.
Right.
But they like to think that, no, well, we don't have that problem. The hell they don't.
Right.
All the religions do. I mean, you have that same problem in science.
Right.
You know why you have the problem in science? You know why you have the problem in Greek studies of tragedy? Do you know why you have the same problems in the historical Jesus? In the mathematics?
Right.
Was mathematics invented or was it discovered?
Discovered, right.
That's a huge argument.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true, yeah.
So it doesn't matter what subject. Evolution, creationism, the idea about infinity. Is infinity actual? Or is it just a mathematical description that we can think about, but it's not really real? There's a huge argument on that, you know.
Well, shit, what do you believe?
I believe not to believe any of them, but read all their points of view.
Right.
At this point.
Right.
And here's why, and it's kind of paradoxical, and actually it won't get you anywhere if you want to become a professor, because they'll say, no, you have to have a point of view.
Right.
Yeah, my point of view is, everyone's point of view is an interpretation. And therefore, don't tell me that's the truth. It is an attempt to interpret what we can only ever see from a finite, limited point of view. You and I, my friend, we're halfway done with life, if not further.
That's true, yeah.
Well, that ain't very long.
Right,
you know, you look around and you say, well, dude, you got so many books. I mean, thousands of books.
Right.
But when you consider there's billions in print, this isn't 1% of 1% of 1%.
Wow.
This is literally nothing compared to what's been published, right?
Right.
So that tells you the real reality, even though you gather a whole bunch of these kind of wonderful books on calculus and cosmology and all that. The real reality is 99.999% of reality is the stuff we don't know. Because if you haven't read, and I mean you, Rene, just like me, Carrie, and you, anybody else who's watching these videos, if you actually haven't read this book, this one right here,
that
Early Mormonism and the Magic Worldview, you are 100% ignorant of that book. So the vast reality for we finite humans is we are totally ignorant. No matter how learned we think we can get in the mere, 78 years we live?
Right.
Considering the universe is 18 and a half billion. See, they still can't even figure that out.
Right.
13 billion years old. We get to live less than a mere eye blink in time. The vast reality is our ignorance, not our knowledge. It's kind of humbling, huh? Yeah, well,
Shit,
gee,
dude.
thanks for the uplift, dude.
No, so I'm just like, dude, you always stress my mind out whenever I come,
Yeah.
whenever we speak, man. This
Yeah,
is,
it's fun to know. It's just like I tell people, you know, the proper perspective, really without nitpicking, the proper
Right.
perspective is going to be that you are literally 100% superior to everyone else out there in the world at something.
mm,
And at the same time, you are 100% inferior to everyone else out there in the world at something. But we don't know what the somethings are. But there's your perspective.
right.
Because you don't have the right to get so proud and cocky and say, I am close to God
Right.
in my knowledge. And you also do not have the right to say, I'm nothing, I'm a nobody,
Right.
I'll never amount to anything, I'm worthless. You don't have either one of those rights because those are an extreme.
Right.
What we want to do is, like the Kabbalah says, get the central balance. So you accept your ignorance and you accept that you know something and you can continue learning and improving your mind, body, spirit, right? But that doesn't make you better or worse than everybody else. That's why love is the key. I mean, Jesus got it right.
Yeah.
I mean, the ancient people who taught that doctrine got it right. That's
Right.
no joke. Love, genuine love, meaning caring
Okay.
for your fellow man. That's the key. Not knowledge. They don't give a rat's ass what you know.
That's true. Yeah.
They really don't. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
So this is fun. And it's really cool. And yes, it's got me a little bit of notoriety and
Right.
recognition because you know, you look through 50 or 60 of these books and you reference them and you write a 22-page paper with 129 footnotes.
Right.
And people say, my God, you're a genius.
Right.
No, I just look through a few books and,
Right.
and scratch down a few quotes. I'm not a genius.
Right.
But it's kind of fun to assemble stuff from that section and over there. That's my New Testament stuff in the Greek,
Right.
in the New Testament, and the lexicons and analytical dictionaries and all that jazz. And then you pull out some of the Hebrew stuff, and then you go over here to the mathematics and the mythology, and then over here to the Mormonism. You kind of put all that together and say, gee, what kind of a new, kind of expanded, bigger view can I get, and can I discover that might help someone see something new?
Right.
And people say, oh, God, that guy is so smart. I mean, man, he's quoting this and that. He's using Hebrew and Greek and Latin and German and all. And all you're doing is just culling more of the finite material because we can't even see the infinite, let alone conceive of it, simply because of what it is and what we are at this point.
Right.
So you have no choice. You got to be a little humble.
I was gonna say. Yeah.
But you got to have enough self-pride to say, you know what, though? There really is something else I can actually learn. Even if it is from another finite being, that's okay. Because maybe he studied this subject for 70 years of his life.
Right.
And so that means something. That's helpful. And so you go, all right, yeah, I'll read this, you know.
Yeah.
Wow, this guy was a genius. No, he just focused for 70 years of his life on whatever subject
On
it
that
is you
particular
study.
subject. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's just a slow spiral upward is how I've always said it.
Right.
Just keep rising in a
Keep
little bit
rising
more
up.
knowledge, you know. And then if someone's down below you, you don't sit there and snicker at them and make fun of them. You lend your hand
Oh,
down
right,
there and
that's
say,
right.
come on up
Raise
here
them
with
up.
me here. I'll
Yeah.
share some crap with you.
Right.
Kind of fun, you know.
Right.
So yeah, that's my Mormon stuff.
Nice, man.
And like I said, these are double stacked. I mean,
Right.
this whole wall would be full if I could just stretch it out. single.
Right. Of
Just
course.
like that stack back there. All of that's double stacked.
Right.
Just like the historical Jesus. I just have too small of a cotton picking room to put them all out on level. I suppose I could clean out that filthy closet, except all those boxes there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All of those are photocopies of articles and other books that I've, through the years. I don't have any more. So is all this stuff on that second shelf.
Yeah,
all of those are
that.
photocopies.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got hundreds of crap, man. If I could convert the time I spent photocopying all this stuff, I would have a PhD in whatever subject I would have studied.
Right.
Instead, I know a little bit about a few things and not a lot about one thing.
Well, I think
so, you know.
You've been a little humble, but I understand. But you know,
no, I'm just being realistic.
Right.
That's the way it is. I'm just saying.
Wow, this is again, man. It's a
fun,
lot of information here, and
well, I didn't mean to overload you, but you asked, so I'm telling you.
Yeah, definitely.